So today we're going to talk about the table saw. You can see this is our table saw that we're going to use today. It's a pretty straightforward machine, but can be and has the potential of being one of the more dangerous machines that we operate in the shop and that you may have students operating. And so we'll take a few minutes and go over some of the safety features and operation of the saw. When you take a look here, the saw is pretty straightforward. It's called a table saw because it's got a flat table. And then it has the saw blade that comes up out of the top of the table. Great for making a variety of cuts, both a rip cut, which is going along with the grain. And so if you've got a board that needs squared up or you need to take a piece off the board, it's a great tool for making rip cuts. You can also make a cross cut going across the blade with this saw, and so it's very versatile. Also great for big sheets of plywood if you need to make straight cuts on plywood and some of those kinds of things. And so it's a pretty versatile tool with lots of different options, but great to use, but can be dangerous. So some of the first things to take a look at when you have your saw, you can see I got the blade in the up position. You can adjust the height of that blade, and so you utilize this piece right here, this crank, adjust the height of the blade, and so as you move it, you can see it goes up and down based on the height that you need it. We're going to cut this board today. This is was a 2x6, and so what we want to do is we want to bring that blade so that it sits about the size of a tooth above the saw, or above the board. The idea with that extra tooth up there is that we're utilizing most of the teeth for cutting, but also it's low enough so that if something were to jump or whatever and your hand comes across, you don't lose part of your hand because it's close to that board. And so always be about the size of a tooth above the board when adjusting the height. You can also adjust the blade with this dial here, and that can give you angled cuts, similar to some of the other tools that you may use. But if, let's say, you need to cut a 45-degree angle or something like that, this adjustment right here allows you to cut that angle with the board. Where you use it is always take a square and make sure that your blade is square to the table, so setting flat on the table, and then tight against that blade so that you've got a nice square cut. Other than that, that's kind of blade assessment, or blade settings on the saw. Power switches are here. If we're going to do a rip cut like we're going to do today, we're also going to set the adjustment of our fence. That's the nice part about the table saw, is that you can do a fair amount of cuts and you use this fence. Basically, this fence will slide in to where you need it, and so we're going to take off about that much of our board, and so we draw that fence over, and then you take this knob, push it down, and that locks that fence into position. Now we're going to take our board and make sure that we are slid up tight to the fence. When we get ready to cut, we're going to, with steady even pressure, push that board into the saw blade. Just like all the other tools or anything that you use, you don't want to go faster than what the blade can cut, but you're going to go ahead and push on in. Another safety feature, though, that you should have when working with a saw blade is you should have a push stick. This is a homemade push stick, but they have several different versions, so that when that board goes across and your fingers get close, you can take that push stick and push it the rest of the way through without needing to utilize your hands or having your hands close to the blade. With that, that's the basics of the saw and a rip cut. The other tool that you may have is a push slide like this. Say you're making a cross cut. This tool goes in instead of using the fence. You can put that tool on there, hold it tight, and push your board across just like that. We'll do both cuts in just a couple of minutes and demonstrate how to use both of those. So now we're ready to make our cut. We've got our fence slid over tight. We're again going to make that rip cut. And so we've got our fence tight. We're going to check one more time that the blade is going to hit where we want it to and take off the amount of board that we want, and that's just right. We're going to have our push stick in hand and ready so that when our hands get close, we can grab the push stick and finish off the cut. Other than that, I'm just going to back the board off a little bit and turn this on, make sure the blade reaches full speed, and then we'll make our cut. To it, we've got a nice piece cut, same width all the way from end to end. You could see as we pushed along, as I was pushing along, this hand location was here, never getting it, never letting this hand get closer than what the blade guard is right there. Pushing along, and then as we got close, continuing to push with the push stick. The other cut we're going to make today is the cross cut, and so that cut is pretty straightforward, but we are just going to lift our release and slide our fence right back out of the way. We'll use the protractor gauge now, slide that in its natural slot, bring that board tight, and again we'll line up with our lines, slide back, let the saw reach speed, and push on through. Always make sure you push all the way through the saw to get everything off completely, and then don't clear any scraps away until the blade has come to a stop. Other than that, that's the operation of the table saw. We'll see you in class.